How's it going, everybody? 10 years. Who knew? I knew it was coming, and I was being trying to be very positive on the whole idea because it's for the past couple of weeks, probably longer than that now. I've been when I go to customer meetings, I will say that I've hit my 10 years as a CCIE, even though that I hadn't actually officially hit the date, but it was a couple weeks out. I figured no one was going to give me a hard time about being a couple weeks early. But I haven't talked about the actual exam itself in a long time. And I figure, this is 10 years ago today. Actually, I was thinking about this earlier today, and I was curious. Can I go back to 2015? 2015, October 19th was a Monday. So Monday, October 19th, 2015 was when I took the lab exam for the third time. And I took it, my first attempt, and all three attempts were in RTP, North Carolina. I took, the first one was April 28th. And my first attempt, I thought I was ready. And when I sat for the lab, I was a nervous wreck. And rightfully so. I didn't have a CCIE yet, and I put an exorbitant amount of pressure on myself to try to pass it. And up until that point, I was still trying to figure out some things. I'd only been doing networking for probably 5 years at that point, but I was consistently studying for it. I got my CCNA, I grabbed my CCNP, and getting my CCIE was the next milestone I was going after. April 28th comes. Back then it was version 5, and it was 2 hours of troubleshooting, 30 minutes of diagnostics, and 5.5 hours of configuration. And I passed DIA, but I failed T-shoot and configuration. And I did okay in configuration. I don't think I ran out of time, but I know that the exam itself, I knew I couldn't get certain things working. And I remember in T-shoot, I couldn't get there's one task in troubleshooting that I couldn't get my output to match theirs. And so I automatically discarded that ticket as being resolved or solved. And back then you got 10 tickets in 2 hours, so you had, 12 minutes a ticket, I think? I forget what they broke it down to. But there was a whole dedicated, especially back when I was going through INE, on the IEOC, the INE online community, or Internet Network Expert online community, however they called it. I don't even think that thing's around anymore. If it is, I have no idea how to access it. But I was consistently on there, and I was going through it by myself, meaning the preparing for the lab. Failed my first attempt, and flew from North Carolina back to Milwaukee, and I remember landing in Milwaukee at like 11 o'clock at night or something like that. And my wife and kids were there, and they had like congratulation balloons, and I knew I had failed. So I had to I I haven't got my results yet, try to play it off a little bit. But I actually locked myself out of the portal. So yeah, don't do that. They'll send you an email when you get there. So anything you do in the portal, you do anything, whatever your primary email address is, they'll send you a link, or they'll send you an email to that email address when it's okay for you to log in. So fast forward a couple of months, I did a lot more studying, and June 28th, it was a Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. So I took the lab on a weekend. How I found out about that, I don't remember, but I found out that there was going to be weekend dates, and I came in on the weekend and took the lab that day. I did actually pretty well. I thought I passed, and but I couldn't get. I'm trying to remember. Because of the exam has changed over time, so I think I'd be okay. There were part of the exam where you had to get DMVPN to work. DMVPN was on the exam, and I knew I did well in T-shoot, diag, and config. I got just about everything working, but there was this one specific task that you had to get working that if you couldn't get this trace route to work a certain way, and I couldn't get the trace route to work. Ping wouldn't work, trace route didn't work, and I was frustrated because I couldn't figure it out. So I went through and left the exam, saved all the configs, got the notice that I had failed, but I had gotten pass. So I got pass, fail. So I passed T-shoot, passed diagnostic, passed config, but I failed the overall. So I didn't have the 80 full points, or whatever it was. I'm going to say 80 because that sounds about right, to pass the exam. So I was like, bummer. So I chalked up, I coughed up another $1,000, and I paid for a reread. Don't ever waste your time on a reread. I definitely wouldn't recommend that. Take that money and put it towards your next attempt, and try it again. You can take the exam one time a month, and I wish I would have done that because I would have gotten there sooner. So from June 28th, I ended up leaving a job and getting an opportunity with a VAR in the area that I worked at, Northern Illinois, and within a couple of weeks of working there, I went to my boss, and I still stay in contact with him loosely every once in a great while. We'll talk on LinkedIn, but for the most part, I went to him and I said, "Hey, listen," I said, "I think I'm ready. I just need some time to ramp up." And he goes, "Take whatever time you need." So I ended up working from home, basically that for the next couple of weeks, and all I did every day, and they intentionally didn't give me any work. I was basically just getting paid to pass the lab at that point, but they needed a CCIE on staff, and so I went and all I did from let's say the beginning of October until the day I passed, or the last couple of days before that, for that 2 weeks ramping up. So October 1st until like October 16th or whatever it was, all I did was I did 2 full labs a day. So I did one in the morning and I did one in the afternoon. So I'd get up at 8 o'clock. So I was available for work. Like I had my laptop in front of me, and I could do all that type of stuff. If it was needed for work, I could do it. But for the majority of it, I was basically heads down labbing all day long. And that's what I did for 2 solid weeks straight. I think I did 30 full-scale labs. And it was just going over and over and over and over again. And that's all I did. And I went through that process, and I got to a certain point where I was just like, okay, it's now or never. And so my second attempt and my third attempt, it was the exact same lab. And I remember sitting down. A matter of fact, I took the lab exam with a good friend of mine, Jason. He knows who he is if he's watching this. So I took the lab exam with him the same day. So he had gotten there a couple days before me, and so I flew into North Carolina, and he and I took the shuttle to RTP that morning. It was a Monday morning. I flew in, I think, on a Sunday. So I did that. We went out to dinner, and then we hung out for basically that entire night and studied. And so we were like bouncing ideas off each other. We would we drew out we had sheets of computer paper, and we drew out diagrams, and we like picked each other's brains on how we would solve different scenarios and stuff like that. So we were down in the weeds. What config, why this prefix list would work, and why that redistribution statement is important, things like that. So it's I sat for the lab the next day, and I don't want to say I was having the best day ever, but I was having the best day ever. So long story short, I got to the exact same point in the third attempt that I was in the second attempt, and I couldn't get DMVPN to work. And I had labbed the absolute crap out of DMVPN. There wasn't... Actually, I'll rewind a little bit. In that exam, I remember there being a ticket for DMVPN, and I remember... Was it 3 spokes in the exam that needed to get working, and one of them wasn't. And I couldn't, like, at first glance, I was like, this is weird. But the other 2 were working. So I was like, oh, this is easy. So all I did was I grabbed the config that I knew was working, and I just said no tunnel X on the spoke that wasn't working and pasted in the good working config, brought it up, and I chalked it up to, okay, there you go. So they don't know in the exam what you deleted and what you didn't delete. Because like if you were to do a CLI checker with how many lines of config there are and stuff like that, it would be the same. So when I did my troubleshooting ticket, that's one of the ways that I solved it. So, but they don't have troubleshooting anymore. It's design now. So I'm not worried about giving a tactic away that I used in the lab. But I do remember sitting in the lab and getting to the DMVPN section and getting it up and running to a certain extent, but then I couldn't get the traceroute to work. And so I had told myself that if I ran into the same problem again, and I was like, oh crap, it's going to be a 4th attempt. I need to disconnect from this for a second. And so I ended up going to the restroom, and the bathroom there was a bit of a walk. So I ended up so I got up and I grabbed the key. There was this I'm not even sure how to describe it. It was like a keychain plus a lanyard and a bunch of other stuff on it. It was very obvious. And I'm not going to pull it down because it's pin-boarded to my cork board, but I still have the original, my third attempt, that you would give you these "Hi, my name is" stickies that you would go if you show up to somebody with your name on it. So it's got the my name, my track, that I'm a CCIE candidate on it. So I remember having that on me. He sees this. So as I'm walking back to the lab, and there's this guy that walks past me. He's walking up to me and he goes, "Oh," he points. He goes, "So without getting too detailed, how's it going?" And I said, "It's going okay." And he's like, he goes, "Well, going." It was like, how did he word it? Like, what could make it better or something like that. And I said, I'm struggling to get this one thing working, and he's just like looking at me. And he goes, and as I'm literally talking through the problem, it clicks in my brain what's wrong. And he goes, because he could tell that I had like the light bulb went on. And he goes, "Say no more." He was like, "Good luck to you." And I said, "Appreciate that." So I walked back to the lab room and put the thing back on the bathroom pass back on the locker or filing cabinet, whatever the heck it was, and sat down at my computer, and on the hub I did a show run EIGRP, and for those of you that know the syntax, I did a do show run pipe section EIGRP specifically, and I had the diagram pulled up of the IPv4 addressing, and I looked at it, and the network statement was missing for the tunnel. And I was like, are you serious? So I typed in that network statement on the hubs, and I should say on the hub, the spokes came up with the adjacencies, and not only did my traceroute work at that point, so did my multicast when I had to go test multicast. So multicast worked, and that's when I would say the last domino and the setup of dominoes that you would have fell into place, and I was like, wait, hold on. And I had to like calm myself down, and I was like, what is going on here? So I then started looking through all of the config. Now I had quite a bit of time left over, and I'll say probably an hour and a half to 2 hours left in the exam, and I was pretty much done. So now it was, I went through the lab twice, and to be honest with you, and as I was going through the lab is when I was just like, I started catching, wasn't little mistakes, but I had intentionally focused on core competencies, meaning that I remember there being this task that they said to external connections don't form dynamic adjacencies, and I'm not going to take it any further than that, what they were asking, but if it was a peripheral topic or task, I didn't waste my time on it because I wanted to get the core things working. So then I started adding in the little things, and I checked my route map statements, and I started checking my prefix list statements, and my exam level restrictions, and then my task level restrictions, so on and so forth. And so by the time I went through all of that again, I caught a couple of little minor mistakes. Like I was supposed to use a hyphen instead of an underscore, and so I changed those things around, still made sure things were working the way that they were supposed to be. And I had checked everything twice, and I'm like, pings worked, traces worked, and I was like, I think I'm good. Like everything worked the way that it was supposed to be, and I was like, and I was trying my very best to try to stay calm and not get too excited, because I didn't want to get excited and find out that you put all this extra effort in, you overcame a hurdle, and things didn't work out. So I ended up, the proctor came in, and I went literally router by router. I did a write mem, and I made sure that all my configs were saved. And my buddy Jason and I walked out, and I was pretty happy. There were some other people there that I know passed the exam at the exact same time I did. There was some data center. There was I think a security, voice. I know either guy to the side of me was taking data center. So I had glanced over at their, back then it was a single monitor. Everything was done on a single monitor. I had looked over at theirs, and I could see data center on both. I had seen their topology, and they had Nexus and UCS and stuff like that stood up. So I know the guy to my right passed for sure, because I remember his name was very unique and well-known name. I'm not going to say who he is because I have not talked to him since that day. So I went ahead and my buddy Jason and I walked out of the lab, walked to the lobby, and we called for the shuttle to the airport. And so I called my wife, and I said, she was, how did it go? And I said, if I failed, I don't know how. And she's like, okay, that sounds promising. And so the shuttle came and picked us up. I was still pretty excited. My buddy, on the other hand, wasn't feeling so great, because I was just like, I was trying to be positive for him, but not trying to gloat at the same point in time. And so I ended up he and I went to the airport. He was going one way, I was going another. So we ended up grabbing dinner again. And before we split our separate ways, I wished him luck. And I said, I'm feeling pretty confident about my exam. I said, but in the event that you don't pass yours, I was like, I'll still stay available to you if you need any guidance or help or want to bounce stuff off of me and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, cool, man, appreciate it. So when I got to my flight and then flew home, and when I got home, my wife picked me up from the airport. I got home and I needed some downtime. But I wasn't. I knew I had passed. If I had failed, I didn't know how. So, I remember needing some downtime after the flight because I was so wound up. I ended up watching NCIS. It was on the way back. I shouldn't say way back. It was 10 years ago. But I remember sitting or laying in bed watching NCIS, and I looked at the clock, and it was 1:30. And I'm like, I really got to go to bed. And so I grabbed my phone and I refreshed my email, and which I thought it was a little weird that it hadn't made any type of notification, because normally Outlook, when you get an email, it'll let you know that, hey, there's an email. So I went ahead and checked it, and it said CCIE at Cisco.com, and I'm like, oh. And so I logged in from my phone, and at first when I logged in, if you guys have never seen the portal, let me go to the dashboard. Once it loads, it takes a couple seconds. This is what it looks like, in case nobody's ever seen the portal. This is what the portal looks like. And so at first when I logged in, none of this existed. All this was, the only thing that was there was this routing and switching one. And they used to tell you the score. Used to sit over here. I got like a 970 on the written exam the first time I took it. And so, as you can see here, I failed April 28th. I failed June 28th. And then and it said reread requested, payment successful. So I did a reread on this one on October 19th. And it says no reread info, but pass. And so I was like, okay, cool. So, and up here in the corner, if you click on the pass here, this is what it looked like. And so it showed me all this information here, and I was like, back then it would say routing and switching lab exam, not enterprise infrastructure. But this is what the portal looks like, and so that's how that comes into play. So I looked at this one, and I was just like, I clicked on the pass, and it gave me this little pop-up, and that's when I got my number. And now it shows you your number right here. At first, the first time I looked at it, I was like, wait a minute, this looks a little weird. And, so it is what it is, but at the end of the day, this is one of those things where you're like, you really don't care about the other stuff, right? You're only focused on the one thing. And then, so if you go to logo access here, it'll process, and then you get your normal CCIE logo, but then you get your 10-year logo here. Now, today's my 10-year anniversary. So my guess is when you hit 15, 20, 25, those logos will be here as well. And now that I've hit that, I can actually purchase Emeritus. I haven't looked. Let's see here. Emeritus status is available. 10 years old. The status will have. Oh, maybe it's the status will give the long established another way to stay involved without having to recertify. An Emeritus CCIE will not be considered active. Emeritus will go back and active by taking a written exam. So the purchase window open on October 19, 2027. So, okay, so that means for me that I have to wait 2 years. I can't do it at my 10 years. Would have to wait until. My guess is. So back before Cisco made the CCIE recertification a 3-year cycle, it used to be every 2 years you'd have to recertify. So if you had fulfilled the first 2 years and you were going from your second into what would be your third year, at the end of your third year, then that would be considered suspended status. And so back then, that's how that would work. Now they don't do that. So my guess is my recertification. Let's go back to the dashboard. I can't purchase Emeritus until 2027, which is fine. I'm not really worried about that. But so that's where that would come into play. So I'd have to wait till October 19th of 2027 to purchase Emeritus. I'm okay with that. So what are my goals now? My goals currently, I don't have any current exams scheduled currently, but my goal right now is to go take and pass the Service Provider Lab exam. That is what I'm currently studying for. I did book a practice lab, and I took one yesterday for Service Provider. My goal is to take that and go through each one of them. There's 5 of them for Service Provider. Go through each one of them at least twice, so that I can practice on the actual exam itself. And that's one of the benefits, is it is a exam. It's the exam, same engine that you're going to test on in the actual exam. So I can verify that because in March of this year I sat for security, and then in June I sat for the CCD practical at Cisco Live in San Diego. I failed both, but the whole point was to get exposure to the exam, to the environment. Now they give it to you now for the practice lab. You can pay it's $50 for 4 hours. It's UTC time. So if you're not in UTC, Universal Time Coordinated, you just have to keep that in the back of your mind when you're trying to time it. So it's 5 hours ahead. So I had booked mine from 6 to 10 at night, but it was actually 1 to 5. So for me. So my goal right now is to knock out my CCIE at some point in the very near future. I'm currently working through that right now. I'm studying NSO currently so that I can get that working. And once I I've gone through a couple of labs on it. INE's got an okay lab for NSO. Once you go through the training on it and you understand how it works, that comes in handy. My goal right now is to get it stood up in my home lab so that I can interact with all of my devices with NSO and start working on how it operates, and go from there. So once I get through that piece and I pass the SP lab exam, then I want to go through wireless, at least to the CCNP level. Get my CCNP level of understanding with wireless, because the DE practical had some wireless on it for large-scale networking that I was not familiar with, and it threw me off. I thought it was only going to be service provider. But stadiums, convention centers, and stuff like that, arenas, those are considered large-scale networking for wireless. So that's something that I was just like, that makes sense. So long story short, that is what I'm working on now. So after I pass the SP Lab exam, then it's diving into CCNP wireless so that I can get a deeper dive into the wireless section. Security, I don't know if I would go after my wireless IE. I don't know, because I know they just revved it, and that by the time I get to it, it'll be time to take the new version. They're going to redo it. So Network Dojo is how I would go through that. Jeff has got a lot of really good content for wireless. He's like the guy for wireless. And then there would be some security stuff that I would want to go through. But security is probably the most difficult of the tracks because there's just so many technologies to learn. I would have to take my time going through each one of them for ASA, iOS router, FTD, ICE, web security, email security, malware, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into play with that. If you're looking to play around with an exam, I would highly recommend you guys check out the practice labs, and they have a bunch of tracks that you can go through. So you have security, enterprise infrastructure, service provider, and data center. I would definitely spend my time going through them. So like service provider, I don't know, let's take a look at security and data center. So if you look at service provider, they give you all the diagrams, the addressing that goes along with it, the versions of config you're going to be working on, and then what the labs are going to entail. So there's a lot of details in here that you're going to want to be comfortable with, and all the stuff that goes along with that. Security is the same thing. So this is sort of like what you would. So this is from what I've been told, this is similar in size to the actual CCIE exam. So, but there's still some stuff missing. Where security, having sat for it, this is about half of what you would get. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, but there's about half missing. So there's a lot of stuff that you can go through. And like I said, you've got multiple platforms that you have to be familiar with, right? You have, you've got router security, you've got ASA, you've got FTD, you've got email, web, and then you have ICE, and then you've got AnyConnect, then you've got FireAmp Cloud. And so if I were you, if you're studying for your security CCIE, this is what I would recommend you go do, so you can go through the different sections and be comfortable working with them, because this is essentially what the exam looks like. I'm not identical, but it's similar. So now data center, I have not sat for this one yet, but so these are a 5-hour session. So I might start giving this some consideration. How many different exams do they give you? Because this is the first time I'm seeing data center. ACI. It looks like this is brand new. Interesting. Yeah, this just got released within the last 30 days. So this is kind of cool, actually. So they've got your typical Nexus 9K, 9K, 7K, 5K, 3K, going down to your fabric interconnects, to your UCS-B, so this is your chassis. Then you've got your storage array back here, probably some sort of fiber channel or iSCSI, probably fiber channel, well, especially with the FIs. Then you got your 9K, 7K. My guess is some sort of VPC design here. Potentially VPC design here too. Then we have a remote leaf for your ACI architecture. And then you've got your ACI DC1, so it's a multi-data center or multi-site ACI deployment. And then you've got your host, your APIX. So I would be curious to see what this looks like. Now that I see this, and there's a practice lab, and it's 5 hours long, I maybe look into diving into this one. So, designed to closely mirror the environment you will encounter in the actual lab. Exact set of devices may differ. You will work with comparable range of hardware-based equipment. DC1 is 5K, 7K, 9K. DC2 is 7K, 9K. Multi-pod fabric, 9K and spines. Independent fabric using 9K and leaves. Then your remote leaf. So interpod and inter-site connectivity. Additionally, Nexus dashboard fabric controller, NDFC, and the orchestrator to do all of that. So lab 1, do they have? That's it. They only have one lab because it's hardware based. Most of this is hardware based. The switches, you can learn quite a bit of your normal routing and stuff like that on the 9Ks that are virtual. You won't be able to do VDCs, virtual device contexts, unless you have a physical 7K and you're running my information is significantly out of date. So don't claim me as gospel. But if you wanted to do any type of VDC design and any extravagant like OTV or relay transport virtualization, you need SOUP 2E. I haven't touched the 7K in 10 years. So I don't know what has, well, not quite that long. It's been probably 7K. No, it's been 6 years, 7 years. So since I've touched one, right? No, not that long. I've been where I'm at now for 4 years since I touched a 7K, because I used to work a lot with 7Ks and migrating them to 9K designs. So, but my technical understanding about how a lot of this stuff works, I haven't refreshed my memory on data center in a long time. So, a lot of this is going to be hardware dependent. Like you can't do ACI, a full-blown ACI deployment unless you have physical hardware. So now that I'm seeing this, I'm like, okay, maybe I spend the time to go learn data center after I knock out service provider. And so we'll see how that plays out, and then go book the, how much is the, reserve your session. So how much is this? Book a practice lab. We're going to say data center, select topic, build your own lab. Oh, that's what it is. So we'll say the 21st from here to here. Next. I agree. Next. $50. Okay, that's actually relatively reasonable. Quite nice, to be honest with you, for build your own lab. So there's that piece. So I would definitely check that out if you want to dive into that. It's a build your own. This lab offers a blank canvas experience. You will provide access to all devices and systems within the topology. Basic connectivity has been pre-configured as described in the initial configuration section below. Beyond that, there are no predefined tasks, giving you the freedom to implement your own scenarios. Pretty cool. I think that's the same thing with Entrprise, if I'm not mistaken. I think it is build your own lab as well, because that's what Entrprise looks like. Build your own lab, right? So that's what they've done. They've given you the same thing with Entrprise. So Entrprise and data centers bring your own lab. Security and service provider, you can do whatever you want, or they have predefined tasks. So pretty cool in that respect. So I will let you be the determination factor on how you handle all those things, and all the stuff that goes along with that. So, but as I mentioned, this is the stuff that I wanted to talk about in my 10-year update and stuff like that. So I'm technically, tomorrow would be the first time I would have learned about it, because I didn't find out until October 20th that I had passed. But that's okay. I'm not going to hold back on that. Thank you guys for everything. I really appreciate all the support and the well wishes over the years. I'm going to continue to keep doing what I've been doing and all that stuff. So if you guys have any questions on anything, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. I'll put a link to the Discord server, as well as the link to the workbooks, if you guys are interested in getting access to the workbooks, and go from there. So with that being said, thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll catch all of you guys in the next one.